Right, here is a number for you. Australia has over 34,000 kilometres of coastline. That is more coastline than nearly any country on Earth. And yet somehow, the national conversation about beachside living always ends up focused on the same handful of suburbs where the median house price has more digits than a phone number. Bondi, Byron, Noosa, the Mornington Peninsula, places where a modest fibro cottage with a partial ocean view through your neighbour's bathroom window will set you back somewhere between $1 and $3 million. It is as though the entire continent agreed to pretend the other 33,950 kilometres of coast simply do not exist. But they do. And some of them are extraordinary. So subscribe and let's start. Number 10, Eden. The Sapphire Coast town where whale watching comes with a house you can actually afford. Eden sits on the far south coast of New South Wales, approximately 476 kilometres south of Sydney and 553 kilometres east of Melbourne. It is, quite literally, the last major town on the New South Wales coast before you cross into Victoria, and its position at the bottom of the state has kept it off the radar of the speculative property investors who have turned most of the East Coast into an affordability crisis. The median house price in Eden sits at around $420,000, which in the context of New South Wales coastal real estate is the equivalent of finding a $100 note in an old jacket you forgot you owned. Eden is built around Twofold Bay and at one of the deepest natural harbours on the Australian coast, and historically one of the most important whaling stations in the Southern Hemisphere. The whaling industry is long gone, replaced by a tourism economy built around the very creatures they used to hunt. Humpback whales migrate through Twofold Bay between May and November, and Eden's whale watching industry has become a genuine drawcard. The Killer Whale Museum in the town centre tells the story of Old Tom, a killer whale who allegedly cooperated with local whalers in a practice known as the Law of the Tongue. Whether you believe that story or not, the museum is fascinating and the whale watching is spectacular. But Eden is not just about whales. The town sits at the northern edge of Ben Boyd National Park, featuring dramatic red sandstone formations, pristine beaches, and coastal walking trails. The Sapphire Coast is named for the colour of the water, and it earns that name. The beaches are long, empty, backed by native bushland, and you can walk for an hour without seeing another person. The town has a population of around 3,000. The Southeast Regional Hospital in nearby Bega covers major medical needs, and Eden has general practitioners, a pharmacy, cafes, a supermarket, and functional infrastructure. The fishing industry remains active, and the surrounding region provides surfing, diving, fishing, kayaking, bushwalking, and birdwatching within immediate reach. For anyone selling in Sydney, the mathematics are straightforward. Sell for $1.5 million, buy in Eden for $420,000, and you have freed up over $1 million. The Downsizer Super Contribution Scheme allows anyone over 55 who has owned their home for at least 10 years to contribute up to $300,000 each into super tax-free. For a couple, that is $600,000 sheltered in super while you live in a house you own, outright where whales swim past your doorstep, and the nearest traffic jam involves a pelican crossing the road. Eden is not glamorous. It does not have a cocktail bar with harbour views. What it has is a coastline that people pay thousands to visit on holiday, a community that functions like a community, and a property market that has not been colonised by speculators. That combination is becoming rare, and Eden's position at the end of the road is exactly what has preserved it. Number 9. Portland. Victoria's birthplace, where the Great Ocean Road meets a price tag that does not require a second mortgage. Portland sits on Portland Bay in the far southwest of Victoria, approximately 360 kilometres west of Melbourne. It was the first permanent European settlement in Victoria, established in 1834, which makes it older than Melbourne itself. The town has a population of roughly 11,000 and a median house price of around $410,000, which for a Victorian coastal town is genuinely remarkable. The Mornington Peninsula will charge you over $1 million. The Bellarine Peninsula is heading the same direction. Even towns further along the Great Ocean Road have climbed well past $500,000. Portland, sitting at the western end of the coastline, has somehow remained affordable, and the reasons are worth understanding. Portland's economy was historically built on fishing, aluminium smelting, and agriculture. The Alcoa smelter was the town's largest employer for decades, keeping the property market grounded. The fishing fleet remains active, and the port handles commercial shipping. This industrial heritage means Portland never became a tourist town like Lorne or Apollo Bay, and that is precisely what kept prices accessible. The town was built by people who worked there, not by weekend visitors, and that distinction has made all the difference. The coastline around Portland is spectacular in a way that the Great Ocean Road's more famous sections would recognise. Cape Bridgewater, just a short drive from town, features a petrified forest, a seal colony, blowholes, oars and cliff formations that look like they were designed by someone with an unlimited special effects budget. The Great Southwest Walk is a 250-kilometre walking trail that passes through Portland and covers some of the most dramatic coastal scenery in the state. The beaches include Bridgewater Bay, which is a long, sheltered, white sand beach that faces west and catches the kind of sunsets that make people post things on social media they later regret. Portland has a hospital, the Portland District Health Service, which provides emergency care, inpatient services, and a range of allied health programs. The town has general practitioners, dentists, a pharmacy, and the standard suite of services you need for daily life. Shopping is adequate, if not extensive, with a main street that includes cafes, a supermarket, specialty stores, and the kind of local businesses that give a town its character. The nearest major regional centre is Warrnambool, about 100 kilometres east, and Hamilton sits inland for additional services. For retirees, Portland offers something most Victorian coastal towns cannot: a house on a full block within walking distance of the beach for under $450,000. The rental yield sits at around 5.8%, and properties spend a median of 64 days on market, indicating a balanced market. The cost of living is substantially lower than Melbourne, and the V-Line coach network provides transport connections. The heritage architecture in town is genuinely beautiful. Federation-era buildings, stone churches, and tree-lined streets give Portland a sense of permanence that newer developments lack. It feels like a real town rather than a collection of holiday houses. Portland is not trying to be Lorne. It is a working coastal town with dramatic scenery, affordable housing, and a community that has been getting on with things since before Victoria was even a colony. At $410,000, it is arguably the best value coastal town in the state. Number 8. Port Lincoln, the seafood capital of Australia, where the tuna is expensive, but the houses are not. Port Lincoln sits on Boston Bay on the southern tip of the Eyre Peninsula in South Australia, approximately 650 kilometres west of Adelaide by road or a quick flight across Spencer Gulf. The town has a population of around 15,000 and a median house price of approximately $490,000. It is known as the seafood capital of Australia, which is a title it takes seriously enough that the local economy essentially revolves around fishing, aquaculture, and the marine industry. Southern bluefin tuna, king prawns, abalone, and oysters all come out of these waters, and the town's relationship with the sea is not just aesthetic, it is economic, cultural, and deeply practical. The coastline around Port Lincoln makes international visitors question why they spent so much flying to the Mediterranean. Boston Bay is one of the largest natural harbours in the world, 3 times the size of Sydney Harbour, and the water is clean, calm, and absurdly blue. The surrounding beaches range from sheltered family spots to dramatic surf breaks. Lincoln National Park and Coffin Bay National Park offer pristine coastal wilderness. Coffin Bay is the source of Coffin Bay oysters, considered among the world's best, available fresh from the farm gate for a fraction of city restaurant prices. Port Lincoln has a hospital, the Port Lincoln Health Service, which provides emergency, surgical, obstetric, and allied health services. The town has multiple general practitioners, a dentist, specialists who visit on a rotating basis, and the kind of health infrastructure that makes permanent residency viable rather than just a holiday fantasy. There are schools, sports clubs, a marina, cafes, restaurants, and a main street that functions as the commercial and social hub of the town. The Wharf Precinct has been developed with restaurants and public spaces that make the most of the waterfront location, and the annual Tunarama Festival, which includes a tuna tossing competition, is the kind of event that could only exist in a town that genuinely loves its fish. South Australia's tax structures are favourable for buyers. No land tax on your principal residence, competitive stamp duty, and lower council rates than metropolitan areas. The cost of living from groceries to utilities is substantially cheaper than Adelaide, let alone the eastern capitals. Sell in Sydney for $1.5 million, buy in Port Lincoln for $490,000, and the arithmetic speaks for itself. The downsizer scheme can channel freed up equity into super to generate tax-free retirement income. The remoteness is a consideration. Port Lincoln is a long drive from Adelaide, and while Rex Airlines operates flights, it does not have capital city transport connectivity. But that remoteness is also why the beaches are empty. The seafood is fresh, and the prices have not been inflated by speculative investment. Port Lincoln asks a simple question: do you want to live by the sea, eat some of the best seafood in the world, and own your home outright? If the answer is yes, the maths here work. Number 7. Kalbarri, where the Indian Ocean meets ancient gorges and the median price is less than a Sydney deposit. Kalbarri sits at the mouth of the Murchison River on the coral coast of Western Australia, approximately 589 kilometres north of Perth. The town has a population of around 1,600 permanent residents, though that number swells dramatically during tourist season when people come to experience one of the most visually stunning landscapes in the country. The median house price sits at approximately $470,000, and vacant land can be purchased for as little as $150,000, which means building a custom home on the coast is not just a fantasy, but a financially viable option. The Kalbarri National Park covers more than 183,000 hectares and features 2 distinct landscape types that make it unique on the Australian coast. The coastal cliffs, where ancient red sandstone meets the Indian Ocean in formations that look like they were sculpted by a particularly dramatic artist, and the inland gorges of the Murchison River, where the water has carved through layers of rock over millions of years to create formations like Nature's Window and Z-Bend Gorge. Nature's Window is one of the most photographed natural formations in Western Australia, a rock arch that perfectly frames the gorge below, and it is located a short drive from a town where houses cost less than a deposit in Sydney. The skywalk, completed in recent years, extends over the gorge and provides views that would charge an admission premium anywhere else in the world, but here are part of a national park entry fee that costs roughly $25 per vehicle. The beaches in Kalbarri are varied and exceptional. Chinaman's Beach is sheltered and calm. Blue Holes offers natural rock pools and snorkeling. The river mouth provides fishing and kayaking. Red Bluff and Pot Alley are dramatic surf spots where cliffs drop into deep blue water. The wildflower season from July to October transforms the bushland into a carpet of colour. The town has a medical centre, though it is not a full hospital. Serious medical emergencies require transfer to Geraldton, approximately 150 kilometres south, which has the Geraldton Hospital and Regional Health Campus. Kalbarri has a supermarket, cafes, restaurants, a pub, and the kind of tourist-oriented commercial strip that serves both residents and visitors. The pelican feeding at the foreshore is a daily ritual that has become one of the town's signature experiences, drawing crowds of tourists and birds alike. Western Australia's property market has been one of the strongest nationally, with Kalbarri recording growth of over 40% in the most recent annual data, making it the top performing suburb in the country. That reflects both inherent location value and growing recognition that coastal Western Australia offers beauty and affordability in the same postcode. Rental yields are around 6% for houses and over 10% for units, driven by tourist accommodation. For anyone considering Kalbarri, the isolation is the main trade-off. Perth is 6.5 hours south. Geraldton is an hour and a half. This is a lifestyle choice, not a commuter suburb. But for retirees or remote workers, Kalbarri offers world-class scenery, a functional community, a growing property market, and a price point that still allows ownership without financial distress. The sunsets over the Indian Ocean that look like someone spilled a paint factory across the sky are a bonus. Number 6. Wynyard, Tasmania's tulip town on the Bass Strait where the table is set and the prices are fair. Wynyard sits on the northwest coast of Tasmania on the banks of the Inglis River where it meets the Bass Strait. The town has a population of around 5,000 and a median house price of approximately $450,000. It is perhaps best known for Table Cape, a dramatic flat-topped volcanic headland that juts into the ocean and is covered in tulip fields each October during the annual Tulip Festival. The image of thousands of coloured tulips blooming on a cliff above the Southern Ocean with Bay Strait stretching to the horizon is one of Tasmania's most iconic views. And it is located 10 minutes from a town where a 3-bedroom house costs less than a 1-bedroom apartment in Hobart. The beaches around Wynyard are varied and beautiful. The town beach sits right in the settlement itself, a sheltered bay where families swim and fish in the warmer months. Fossil Bluff, a short walk from town, is a geological site where fossils dating back millions of years are embedded in the cliff face and exposed by erosion. Boat Harbour Beach, about 15 kilometres east, is consistently ranked among Tasmania's most beautiful beaches, with white sand, turquoise water, and a backdrop of green hills that looks like it was designed to sell postcards. Wynyard has a hospital in nearby Burnie, about 20 minutes east, where the Northwest Regional Hospital provides comprehensive public services. The town has general practitioners, a pharmacy, cafes, a supermarket, and standard small town infrastructure. The Spirit of Tasmania ferry is in nearby Devonport, and Burnie Airport handles regular flights to Melbourne. Tasmania's stamp duty exemption on properties up to $750,000 eliminates one of the largest upfront purchase costs. The cost of living is lower than the mainland, and the Cradle Coast region has been receiving state and federal investment in infrastructure and healthcare. For retirees, Wynyard offers a temperate maritime climate with mild summers and cool winters. The gardening is excellent, the fishing is excellent, and community events include the Tulip Festival, agricultural shows, and local markets. Whereas the property market in Wynyard and the broader Burnie region has been attracting increasing attention from mainland investors seeking affordable entry points. Regional Tasmania has been outperforming Hobart in recent data, with annual growth of over 4%. For anyone selling on the mainland, Wynyard represents extraordinary value. A coastal town with genuine character, established services, dramatic natural scenery, and a house price that barely registers on the scale Sydney and Melbourne have created. Subscribe to show that these videos actually help and make sense. Or ignore this and go back to scrolling through property listings in suburbs where the median price requires a 6-figure deposit and the ocean view is technically the blue rectangle on your screensaver. Your choice entirely. Number 5. Jurien Bay. The turquoise coast gem with sea lions and sanity-priced housing. Jurien Bay sits on the turquoise coast of Western Australia, approximately 220 kilometres north of Perth. The town has a population of around 2,000 and a median house price of approximately $413,000. The name Turquoise Coast is not marketing exaggeration. The water here is genuinely, almost aggressively turquoise. The kind of colour that people assume has been digitally enhanced in photographs, but which in person is actually more vivid than any photograph captures. The town faces west across the Indian Ocean, and the offshore islands of the Jurien Bay Marine Park create sheltered waters that are calm, clear, and home to one of the most accessible wild sea lion populations in the country. Swimming with Australian sea lions in their natural habitat is one of Jurien Bay's signature experiences, operated by local tour companies in the marine park. The sea lions are curious, playful, and completely unbothered by human presence, which makes the experience feel less like a structured tourist activity and more like an accidental encounter with creatures who are significantly more relaxed about life than you are. The marine park also supports dolphins, sea turtles, and an extraordinary diversity of reef fish that makes snorkeling here a genuine highlight. The town itself is small but functional. There is a general store, a tavern, cafes, a medical centre, a community resource centre, and a recently developed foreshore precinct with a pavilion and skate park that represents the kind of investment in public infrastructure that signals a town with a future. The nearest hospital is in Moora or Geraldton, and the larger town of Cervantes is 30 minutes south. Perth is about 2.5 hours by road, which puts Jurien Bay in that sweet spot of being accessible enough for weekend visits, but remote enough to maintain its character and pricing. The fishing in Jurien Bay is exceptional. Western rock lobster, or crayfish as the locals call them, are abundant in these waters, and the recreational fishing culture is deeply embedded in the town's identity. The Sandy Hook and the marina provide launching points for boats, and the reef systems offshore offer diving and spearfishing opportunities that attract enthusiasts from across the state. The Le Sueur National Park, just inland, is a biodiversity hotspot with more plant species per square kilometre than almost anywhere else in Australia. And the wildflower displays in spring rival those of Kalbarri. Jurien Bay has been identified as a growth town by the Western Australian government, with the Shire of Dandaragan investing in infrastructure upgrades and community facilities. Vacant land is available at competitive prices, and the building industry in the region means that constructing a new home is a realistic option rather than the multi-year nightmare it has become in the capital cities. The town's population has been growing steadily, driven by retirees, sea changers, and remote workers who have discovered that working from a laptop with a view of the Indian Ocean is significantly better than working from a laptop with a view of a cubicle wall. The property market here remains firmly in value territory. $413,000 for a house with turquoise water, sea lions, and world-class fishing is exceptional value. Perth buyers are increasingly turning to the Turquoise Coast, and Jurien Bay sits at the heart of that trend. The beach is never crowded, and the pace of life is what people claim they want, but rarely pursue. Number 4. Streaky Bay, the Eyre Peninsula's hidden gem where the seafood is legendary, and the houses are laughably affordable. Streaky Bay sits on the western side of the Eyre Peninsula in South Australia, approximately 700 kilometres northwest of Adelaide. The town has a population of roughly 2,000 and a median house price that has recently been recorded at around $350,000 for the broader Eyre Peninsula and southwest region, with properties in Streaky Bay itself available from around $250,000 for modest homes to $500,000 for more substantial properties with views. This is one of the most affordable coastal locations in the entire country, and it is also one of the most beautiful. The bay itself was named by Matthew Flinders in 1802 for the streaks of colour he observed in the water, caused by seaweed and varying depths creating bands of aquamarine, emerald, and deep blue that look like someone dragged a paintbrush across the surface. The town sits on a protected bay that is calm, warm in summer, and perfect for swimming, kayaking, and fishing. The surrounding coastline includes some of South Australia's most spectacular and least visited beaches. Back Beach is a surfing spot with consistent waves and virtually no crowds. Palubi Beach, about 20 kilometres south, has been described as one of Australia's best kept secret beaches, with white sand, crystal water, and absolute solitude. The food culture in Streaky Bay is extraordinary for a town of this size. The region produces some of the finest oysters in the country, farmed in the clean, cold waters of the bay. The Streaky Bay Hotel serves fresh, local seafood that would command premium prices in any capital city restaurant. And the broader Eyre Peninsula Food Trail connects Streaky Bay with Port Lincoln, such as Coffin Bay, and other towns in a culinary circuit that is increasingly being recognised as one of Australia's great food destinations. The Eyre Peninsula has been described by some food writers as Australia's answer to the Amalfi Coast, which might sound like hyperbole until you actually eat an oyster that was pulled from the water an hour ago while sitting on a deck overlooking a bay that looks like it belongs in a travel magazine. Medical services in Streaky Bay include a medical clinic and the Streaky Bay Hospital and Health Service, which provides basic inpatient care, emergency stabilisation, and community health services. More complex medical needs require transfer to Port Augusta or Adelaide, and this remoteness is the primary trade-off for the extraordinary affordability. The town has a school, a supermarket, a post office, community sports facilities, and the kind of social infrastructure that makes small town life functional. The community is tight-knit and welcoming, with new residents generally absorbed into the social fabric within weeks rather than months. South Australia's principal place of residence land tax exemption applies here, and ongoing ownership costs are minimal by national standards. For anyone selling in the eastern capitals, the move to Streaky Bay is a complete financial reset. Sell a median-priced house almost anywhere on the east coast, buy in Streaky Bay outright, fund your super through the downsizer scheme, and have hundreds of thousands remaining for living expenses or travel. The point where the ocean meets the outback on the Eyre Peninsula creates a landscape unlike anything else in Australia. Red earth, blue ocean, white sand, golden sunsets. Streaky Bay sits right at the heart of it. At these prices, the question is not whether you can afford to live here. It is whether you can afford to keep ignoring it. Number 3. Venus Bay, Victoria's secret coastal bargain, where the waves are big and the prices are small. Venus Bay sits on the South Gippsland coast of Victoria, approximately 160 kilometres southeast of Melbourne. The town has a permanent population of around 400, though this swells significantly during holiday periods, and the median house price is approximately $350,000. $350,000 for a coastal town in Victoria, within driving distance of Melbourne, on a coastline that includes dramatic surf beaches, sheltered rock pools, and coastal bushland teeming with wildlife. This is not a misprint, and it is not a marketing gimmick. Venus Bay is simply one of those places that has remained under the radar while the rest of the Victorian coast has been priced into absurdity. Venus Bay is a long, narrow settlement stretching along the Bass Strait coastline with the Anderson Inlet on one side and the open ocean on the other. This dual water access is one of the town's defining features. The ocean side offers serious surf beaches with powerful waves and dramatic cliff formations. The inlet side provides calm water for kayaking, fishing, and swimming. You can literally walk from one body of water to the other in minutes, choosing your experience based on the weather, the swell, or your mood. The Cape Lip Trap Coastal Park wraps around the town, providing walking trails, wildlife viewing, and a sense of immersion in nature that is impossible to replicate in a more developed location. The town is deliberately low-key. There is no main street with boutiques and wine bars. There is a general store, and that is essentially the extent of the commercial offering. The nearest significant town is Loch, about 20 minutes north, which has cafes, restaurants, a supermarket, and medical services. Wonthaggi, further north, provides a hospital and broader retail options. Venus Bay is not a town for people who want everything at their doorstep. It is a town for people who want the ocean at their doorstep and are willing to drive 20 minutes for a coffee. The property market in Venus Bay highlights the enormous price differential within Victorian coastal real estate. The Mornington Peninsula, roughly the same distance from Melbourne, has medians well over 1 million. The Bellarine Peninsula is heading the same way. Even Phillip Island is significantly more expensive. Venus Bay has remained affordable because it has remained small, resisted overdevelopment, and the permanent population is small enough that the market is not driven by frenzied competition. For Melbourne buyers, Venus Bay is an extraordinary opportunity, a genuine coastal property on a genuine surf coast within weekend driving distance for a price that would barely cover a deposit in the metropolitan market. The lifestyle is outdoor-focused, community-oriented, and deliberately simple. Surfing on the ocean side, fishing in the inlet, walking the beach at sunset without encountering another person. This is what people say they want, and Venus Bay delivers it at a price that makes the decision almost embarrassingly easy. Number 2. Cardwell, tropical North Queensland's waterfront secret where the reef meets the rainforest and the prices defy belief. Cardwell sits on the coast of North Queensland, approximately 170 kilometres north of Townsville and 80 kilometres south of Innisfail. It is the only town on the highway between Brisbane and Cairns that is actually located on the waterfront, with the main street running parallel to the beach and the views across the Coral Sea to Hinchinbrook Island dominating every aspect of the town. The median house price in the broader Cassowary Coast region is around $370,000, and in Cardwell itself, properties regularly sell for between $250,000 and $350,000. For a waterfront town in tropical North Queensland, these numbers are remarkable. Hinchinbrook Island is the centrepiece of Cardwell's appeal. It is Australia's largest island national park, a mountainous wilderness of mangroves, rainforest, beaches, and coral reefs rising dramatically from the ocean across the channel. The Thorsbourne Trail, a 32-kilometre hiking track, is considered one of the great multi-day walks in Australia, limited to 40 hikers at a time. The views from Cardwell across to the island are extraordinary. Green mountains rising from blue water, clouds draped across the peaks, and tropical scenery that belongs on a documentary rather than outside somebody's kitchen window. The town sits at the intersection of two World Heritage areas, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park and the wet tropics of Queensland. This is the only place on Earth where two World Heritage areas meet the coast simultaneously. The cassowary roams the surrounding rainforest, and sightings in town are not uncommon. The esplanade was rebuilt after Cyclone Yassi devastated Cardwell in 2011, with new waterfront facilities including a pool, barbecue areas, and a jetty for fishing and boat trips to the reef. Cardwell has a medical centre, and the nearest hospital is in Ingham, about 30 kilometres south. The town has a supermarket, cafes, a pub, and the essential services of a small regional community. It is not a large town. The population is around 1,300, but the community is active. The fishing is world-class, and the cost of living is a fraction of what you would pay in Cairns, which is about 2.5 hours north, and where the median house price has climbed well above $500,000. The tropical climate requires honest consideration. The wet season brings heavy rain, humidity, and the possibility of cyclones. Cardwell was badly damaged by Yassi and Larry before that, and while rebuilt infrastructure is better designed, the risk is real and should factor into insurance and purchasing decisions. The dry season from May to October is spectacular. Warm, sunny, low humidity, and the kind of weather that makes Melburnians weep. For anyone who has dreamed of living on the tropical coast, Cardwell offers something that seems almost too good to be true. A waterfront town between the reef and the rainforest with a median price lower than a deposit in most capital cities. The catch is the cyclone risk, remoteness, and limited services. The reward is waking up every morning to Hinchinbrook Island across turquoise water and owning your home outright with enough money left over to actually enjoy retirement. Number 1. Loch Sport. Victoria's 90-mile beach town where the median price is so low it reads like a typo. Loch Sport sits on a narrow peninsula between Lake Victoria and the 90-mile beach in East Gippsland, Victoria. The town has a permanent population of around 800 and a median house price that hovers around $275,000. Let that number sit with you for a moment. $275,000 for a coastal town in Victoria, on a beach that stretches for 151 kilometers of unbroken sand, making it one of the longest beaches in the world. The 90-mile beach is not a beach in the way that Bondi or Manly is a beach. It is not a curated strip of sand between two headlands with a surf lifesaving club and a car park. It is an enormous, wild, uninterrupted stretch of coastline that runs from near the entrance to the Gippsland Lakes all the way to the far east of the state. The sand is firm enough to walk on for hours. The surf is powerful and unpatrolled, which means you need to be comfortable in the ocean and exercise appropriate caution. The sunrises over Bass Strait are the kind that make people write poetry, or at least think about writing poetry before deciding it is too early and going back to bed. Loch Sport itself occupies a peninsula between Lake Victoria, which is part of the Gippsland Lake system, and the ocean. This means the town has water on virtually every side. The lakes provide calm water for fishing, boating, kayaking, and swimming, while the ocean provides surf, long beach walks, and the kind of isolation that is genuinely difficult to find on the Australian coast. The Gippsland Lakes are the largest inland waterway system in Australia, and they support a commercial fishing industry, recreational boating culture, and wildlife that includes pelicans, sea eagles, dolphins, and seasonal whale sightings. The town is small and services are limited. There is a general store, a community hall, a volunteer fire brigade, and a boat ramp. The nearest significant town is Sale, about 45 minutes north, which has a hospital, supermarkets, schools, and the full range of services. Loch Sport is connected by road but feels remarkably isolated, surrounded by water and bush on a peninsula that narrows to a few hundred meters at points. This isolation is the primary reason for the low property prices, and it is also the primary appeal. For anyone buying at $275,000, the financial implications are staggering. Sell a median-priced property in any capital city, and you could buy multiple properties here with hundreds of thousands remaining. The downsizer scheme could add $600,000 to a couple's super on top of the purchase. Annual ownership costs are minimal. This is a town where the ocean is free, the lake is free, the fishing is free, and the biggest daily expense is deciding whether to have the fish or the chips first. The houses in Loch Sport range from simple holiday shacks used by Gippsland families for generations to more substantial builds on waterfront positions. Vacant blocks are available at prices that would make a Sydney buyer check whether the listing was a joke. The community is a mix of permanent residents, many retirees, and holiday homeowners. The atmosphere is relaxed to the point of being meditative. No traffic, no noise, just the wind, the water, and the birds. Loch Sport is not for everyone. The isolation is real. The services are minimal. The nearest hospital is nearly an hour away. Winter is cold and windy, but for someone who wants to own a home by the sea without a mortgage, who values silence and space over convenience, and who recognizes that $275,000 on one of the longest beaches in the world is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, Loch Sport answers a question most Australians have given up asking. Can I actually afford to live by the ocean? Yes. Yes, you can. And it costs about the same as a modest car. Hit subscribe or spend the rest of your life wondering why you are still paying $1 million for a house that is 45 minutes from the nearest beach, while towns like these sit empty, waiting for someone smart enough to notice them. The subscribe button costs nothing, which is still more expensive than council rates in Loch Sport, but only just. That is the list. 10 coastal towns where the ocean is real, the sand is real, the communities are real. And the prices are the kind of numbers that Australians have forgotten actually exist. Whether you want tropical Queensland or wild Victoria, Western Australian turquoise or South Australian seafood, Tasmanian tulips or New South Wales sapphire, the coastline is waiting. The only question is whether you are going to keep scrolling or start packing.